In this episode, we spend time with one of the most practical parts of security management, because it is not enough to know that risks exist if you cannot turn that knowledge into a plan the business can actually support. Strategic planning is where ideas stop being abstract and start becoming decisions about money, people, time, and priorities. For a beginner, this topic matters because many people assume security succeeds mainly through technical skill, when in reality a large part of success comes from choosing what to do first, explaining why it matters, and making a clear case for the resources needed to do it well. A strong strategy helps an organization move on purpose instead of reacting to every new problem in a panic. It connects security goals to business goals, which is what turns security from a cost that people argue about into an investment that leaders can understand. When budgets, resources, and the business case work together, security becomes more disciplined, more realistic, and much more likely to improve over time. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Strategic planning, at its core, is the process of deciding where an organization wants its security program to go and how it will get there without wasting effort. That sounds simple, but it is easy to confuse strategy with activity. A team can be busy every day and still have no real strategy if it is constantly responding to the loudest problem, the newest threat headline, or the latest request from leadership without a clear sense of direction. A strategy creates alignment by answering a few fundamental questions, even if those questions are never spoken out loud. What are we protecting? Why does it matter to the business? What could most seriously hurt us? What level of protection is realistic? And what can we afford to do now versus later? In security, a strategic plan usually looks beyond the current week or month and considers a longer horizon, often a year or more, while still being practical enough to influence day-to-day choices. That balance matters because the best plans are neither vague speeches nor rigid documents that cannot adapt when the business changes. Budgets enter the picture because every security decision has a cost, even when people pretend it does not. Some costs are obvious, such as buying software, hiring staff, or paying for outside expertise, but many costs are less visible and still very real. Time spent by managers, time spent by employees in training, delays caused by new controls, maintenance work after a purchase, and effort needed to document and govern a new process all consume resources. This is why security managers cannot think only in terms of technical effectiveness. They also have to think financially, because leadership will always compare one proposed use of money against another. A company may need stronger identity controls, better monitoring, more resilient backup practices, or improved vendor oversight, but it still has to decide what receives funding first. Budgeting forces discipline by asking a hard question that strategy must answer honestly. If resources are limited, which investments reduce the most important risk, support the most important business activity, or close the most dangerous gap before something goes wrong? One useful way to understand a security budget is to separate what the organization must spend to operate from what it may choose to spend to improve. Operating expenditure, OPEX, usually refers to recurring costs such as subscriptions, support contracts, salaries, and ongoing services that keep a program running from month to month. Capital expenditure, CAPEX, often refers to larger investments with a longer useful life, though the exact accounting treatment can vary by organization. For a beginner, the key lesson is not mastering accounting terminology, but recognizing that leaders care about whether a cost is one-time, recurring, predictable, or likely to grow. A security manager who asks for funding without understanding this will sound unprepared. A strong planner knows that a new control rarely costs only the purchase price. It may also require implementation work, user training, process changes, and future renewals. That broader view matters because a cheap-looking idea can become expensive after the hidden costs appear, while a more costly option up front may create more stable and manageable spending over time. Money, however, is only one part of resource planning. A strategy can fail even with an approved budget if the organization lacks the people, authority, or time needed to carry it out. This is where resource discussions become broader than finance. A team may have funding for a new initiative, but if the staff is already overloaded, the work will slip, quality will suffer, or the new effort will quietly compete with existing responsibilities until both are weakened. Organizations often underestimate this problem because they count bodies instead of capacity. A full-time equivalent, FTE, is a way to think about staffing in terms of actual work capacity rather than just job titles. And that matters because two people assigned part-time are not always equal to one person focused full-time. Resource planning also includes leadership attention, cooperation from legal and operations teams, access to business owners, and enough credibility to drive change. A security plan that ignores those softer but essential resources may look complete on paper while being nearly impossible to execute in the real world. The business case is the tool that turns a security need into a decision-ready proposal. Many beginners think a business case is just a request for money with a few persuasive sentences attached, but it is much more than that. A real business case explains a problem in business terms, shows why action matters now, compares reasonable options, describes costs and expected benefits, and makes clear what could happen if the organization does nothing. It is not about sounding dramatic or frightening people into agreement. In fact, security arguments that rely only on fear often fail because they sound vague, emotional, or disconnected from business reality. Leaders usually respond better when a proposal shows understanding of operational impact, customer trust, regulatory exposure, downtime risk, labor savings, and resilience. A strong business case tells a coherent story. Here is what matters. Here is the gap. Here are the realistic paths forward. Here is what each path requires. And here is why one option makes the most sense for the organization at this time. That means the best business cases are built around context, not around technology. A beginner may be tempted to say the company should buy a certain product because it has strong features, modern design, or a good reputation in the market. That is not enough. The business case should begin with the environment the organization is actually operating in. Perhaps the company is expanding into new regions, handling more sensitive data, depending on third parties, or facing repeated audit findings that reveal a pattern of weak control execution. Those realities matter more than product excitement. Once the context is clear, the proposal becomes easier to understand because it is grounded in a recognizable business problem. A good business case also acknowledges trade-offs. It should not pretend every benefit is certain or every alternative is foolish. Decision-makers trust proposals more when the author admits limits, identifies assumptions, and shows awareness of both the upside and the implementation burden. That honesty often makes the proposal stronger, not weaker, because it signals maturity and careful thinking. Benefits in a security business case can be challenging to express because security often succeeds by preventing bad outcomes that never become visible. This is why people sometimes struggle to justify spending before a crisis. One useful concept is return on investment, ROI, but security leaders should be careful with it because not every security benefit can be measured cleanly in direct financial terms. Some benefits are easier to estimate, such as reduced manual effort, fewer repeat incidents, less downtime, or lower spending on emergency response. Others are more indirect, such as improved trust, stronger compliance posture, better resilience during disruptions, or clearer accountability across teams. The point is not to force perfect precision where it does not exist. The point is to show reasonable value using the best available information. Good business cases often combine quantitative thinking with plain language judgment. They may describe probable loss reduction, operational efficiency, reduced disruption to critical services, and better decision-making, while also explaining that some benefits appear as improved stability and lower uncertainty rather than as a neat line item on a spreadsheet. Another valuable concept is total cost of ownership, TCO, because the true cost of a decision extends far beyond the sticker price. For example, suppose an organization wants to improve visibility into security events. A beginner might assume the cost is simply the software purchase or subscription fee, but that is only the beginning. The real cost may also include integration work, tuning, additional storage, analyst time, training, process redesign, and continuous maintenance once the system goes live. Without that broader perspective, Leaders may approve an idea that looks affordable but becomes difficult to sustain. TCO helps strategic planners avoid this trap by making them think about the full life cycle of the decision. This mindset also supports better comparisons between options. A more expensive approach may actually cost less over time if it reduces complexity, requires less manual effort, or fits the organization's existing operating model. Strategic planning becomes much stronger when people stop asking what something costs to buy and start asking what it costs to own, manage, and rely on over time. Prioritization is where strategy becomes real because no organization can do everything at once. Even large enterprises with strong funding face constraints in sequencing, attention, change tolerance, and staffing. A beginner should understand that saying yes to one initiative often means saying not yet to another. That is why strategic planning is not simply about identifying good ideas. It is about deciding which ideas matter most in the present moment and which ones can wait without creating unacceptable exposure. Good prioritization usually considers business criticality, known weaknesses, external obligations, available resources, and the difficulty of implementation. Sometimes the smartest move is to fund a foundational capability that is not glamorous, such as asset visibility, identity governance, or backup resilience, because many other controls depend on it. At other times, the best choice may be a targeted improvement that addresses a recurring business pain point quickly and builds trust for future investments. Mature planning accepts that security progress is often staged, with each phase preparing the organization for the next rather than trying to solve everything in one budget cycle. Strategic planning also depends heavily on who must be convinced and who must help carry the plan forward. The Chief Financial Officer, CFO, may focus on cost discipline, predictability, and whether the proposal is financially sensible over time. The Chief Executive Officer, CEO, may care more about business continuity, customer trust, growth, and whether the initiative supports broader organizational goals. Operational leaders often care about workflow impact, speed, and whether a control creates friction for their teams. Legal and compliance partners may focus on exposure, obligations, and defensibility. Because of that, the same proposal cannot be explained in exactly the same way to every audience. Good security planners translate the same core idea into language that matters to each stakeholder without changing the substance. This is not manipulation. It is part of doing the job well. A proposal succeeds more often when leaders can see how it affects their own area of responsibility and when they feel the planning process respected the realities they manage every day. Many weak security plans fail for predictable reasons, and beginners can avoid these mistakes if they learn to recognize them early. One common error is leading with a tool instead of a problem. Another is assuming that because a risk is real, the budget request automatically speaks for itself. That is rarely true. Decision makers need to understand why this need is urgent compared with other demands on the business. Another mistake is underestimating implementation effort and ongoing ownership. A control that has no clear owner, no operational process, and no realistic support model can create the illusion of progress while adding confusion and fragility. Some plans also fail because they treat security as separate from the business rather than embedded within it. When a proposal ignores productivity, change fatigue, user experience, or cross-team dependencies, it may win approval but lose support during execution. The strongest planners understand that strategic success depends not just on being correct about risk, but on being credible about effort, trade-offs, and operational reality. A simple example can make all of this easier to picture. Imagine a growing company that has moved many important processes online and now depends heavily on remote access, cloud services, and a small technology team. Leadership knows security matters, but funding is tight and everyone is busy. The security manager notices several issues at once. Employees have inconsistent access practices, system visibility is uneven, and incident response would be clumsy if a serious event happened tomorrow. Instead of asking for a large and vague budget increase, the manager builds a business case around business continuity and reliability. The proposal explains that the company's growth has outpaced its control environment, which increases the chance of disruption during a security incident. It outlines a phased plan that improves identity controls, strengthens essential monitoring, and creates clearer response procedures. The costs are presented honestly, including staff effort and recurring expenses, while the benefits are framed in terms of reduced downtime, better accountability, and stronger support for the company's continued growth. That example shows another important lesson. A business case does not have to promise perfection. It needs to show progress that is meaningful, credible, and aligned with business reality. In many organizations, leaders are more willing to support a phased strategy than an all-at-once transformation that seems expensive and difficult to control. A phased approach can also improve learning. The organization can implement a foundational improvement, measure the impact, adjust assumptions, and then decide whether the next stage still makes sense. This creates a healthier relationship between planning and execution. It also reduces the chance that the security team becomes trapped defending a grand plan that no longer matches the business environment 6 months later. Strategic planning should create direction, not rigidity. The best plans are disciplined enough to guide investment and flexible enough to adapt when growth, regulation, threat exposure, or internal priorities shift. That adaptability is not a sign the plan was weak. It is a sign the planners understood that security exists inside a living business, not inside a frozen diagram. Once resources are approved, the work is not finished. A strategy must be monitored so leaders can tell whether the investment is producing the expected outcome. This does not mean every security initiative needs a perfect mathematical score, but it does mean there should be a sensible way to judge progress. A key performance indicator, KPI, can help show whether an initiative is being executed as planned, whether adoption is improving, or whether operational performance is becoming more stable. Good measurement in strategic planning is tied to the reason the investment was approved in the first place. If the business case focused on reducing disruption, then leaders should hear about resilience and recovery improvement, not just about activity counts. If the proposal emphasized efficiency, then save time and reduced manual work matter more than technical detail. Measurement also supports accountability. It allows leadership to revisit assumptions, ask whether the initiative should expand, and decide whether the next investment should continue in the same direction or shift toward a more urgent problem. By the end of this discussion, the main idea should feel much clearer. Strategic planning in security is the discipline of turning concern into direction, direction into choices, and choices into sustained improvement. Budgets matter because they reveal what the organization is truly willing to support. Resources matter because money alone does not create capacity, ownership, or execution. The business case matters because it connects security needs to business outcomes in a way leaders can evaluate and act on. When these three elements work together, security stops being a collection of disconnected requests and starts becoming a managed program with purpose. For a new learner, that is one of the most important mindset shifts to make. Good security management is not just about knowing what threats exist. It is about helping an organization make wise decisions under real-world limits, and then using those decisions to build a stronger, more resilient future one sensible step at a time.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.